So there are the headlines. These are the two headlines on Financial Times. This is the fourth part of today's diagnostic look at the Fleet Street, which is Tuesday, 10th of November 2020, and we are going back to continue on the evidence-based crimes committed by the Royal London Hospital criminals who controlled the property mismanagement and other related agenda. And we shall be also updating on the corrupt John Biggs incumbency as the so-called elected mayor at the expense of the community, kind of staging yet another manipulative move in order to avoid getting caught and exposed and penalized for the crimes he has been committing. And we noticed that in the Labour Party in Tower Hamlets, now a number of races that were deactivated for temporary periods have returned. And these racists are now colluding increasingly openly with Biggs and aiding and abetting him in issuing completely criminally irresponsible, untruthful claims that he is in any way or shape or form a supporter of accountability, transparency, and so on. We shall be looking at those in some detail. Now back to the Financial Times, page 2. This piece about Kate Bingham. Now, Kate Bingham is the daughter of one of the more promoted, that is overhyped, members of the British judicial establishment, Tom Bingham. And Bingham's kind of alleged achievements in the law, we shall be looking at, maybe not in this part, but another part or another date. Because if Bingham actually has or had achieved the things that they claim he had, they don't make a list in clear kind of terms, but they give him the stock praise. That is to say, they say things like, one of his kind of promoters or praisers is on the record as saying that he was one of the two best lawyers of this praisers generation. They don't say anything about what made Bingham such a praiseworthy kind of lawyer or judge. And that is where our inquiry will go into details about the role of the judiciary and why we call most of the judges and members of the judiciary and the ones that actually kind of collude and are complicit with the members of the judges in the administrative kind of side of the corrupt legal bureaucracy. And today is the 10th of November. And on 10th of November 1993, Henrietta Manners, the racist criminal sitting as a district judge in the Shoreditch County Court, as it then was, continued to play a conspiratorial, corrupt, illegal, unlawful, discriminatory, prejudiced kind of series of roles. Now, Henrietta Manners surfaced again in November 2011. And she was part of the kind of conspiracy being hatched openly in the Clerkenwell and Shoreditch County Court. Now we shall be publishing fuller factual chronology of the conspiracy and the connection between Henrietta Manners and Judith Goodman and Edward the Racist Fitzpatrick and any other colluder and co-conspirator with these criminals who sabotaged what would and should have been a straightforward kind of appeal upheld against the ruling by Henrietta Manners dated July 2011. And Henrietta Manners ignored all the evidence that was sent to the court during the hours prior to the so-called sitting. She ignored the evidence and she did not examine the evidence. And there was no need for anything else. She should have rejected the Tower Hamlets community housing application for eviction. And we shall kind of put together all the connections in a later edition. But for today, the day and date is marked by remembering what happened. And it was on this date in November 1993 that Paul, the criminal crook Varmin, living in Barnet, 89, is it Ridgemount? We shall check on that address and we shall be updating on this if the correct address has not been included in what I have just said. And it is possible to check that one. And this criminal, Paul Varmin, was so he was in Ridgeview Road in London N20. This criminal was standing there with the two women police constables belonging to the Metropolitan Police. And what they said bore no relationship with what was actually happening. That is to say, they were there without any arrangement or any notice given to the tenant being kind of evicted. And they issued verbally 3 or 4 times a threat that they would arrest the tenant if the tenant attempted to enter their own property. There was no reason, because the tenant had not said that they would be entering or they would be wanting to enter. And that is one of the things that will be followed up with the Metropolitan Police, because that was evidence of a conspiracy which the police were kind of carrying out on behalf of the criminal barman. Back to Henrietta Manners. Now here are the kind of chronological sequences. Henrietta Manners had already kind of issued adverse orders before November 1993, and on dates that we shall be updating on, but then she actually appeared again during the years 1996 to 2001. And she was persistent in refusing to hear the arguments against Tower Hamlets Council. And there was no reason for her to do that, because she was obliged to actually state what so-called law she was following in her hostility. As she did not cite any law, the only conclusion on the facts of her behavior can and must be that she was a racist. Now, that was happening in the 1990s. And those were happening before and after the 1998 Human Rights Act was passed. And what was happening was against the law in any case, even regardless of whether there was this Human Rights Act or not. Because, for example, as we have said in previous kind of commentary and diagnostic analysis, in the judgment by the UK Supreme Court, dated the 17th of January 2017, when David Neuberger was president of the Supreme Court, the Supreme Court ruling was called Belhaj ruling. And Belhaj was the Libyan man that was kidnapped from a Southeast Asian country by the Americans. And Belhaj was tortured in the knowledge and with the complicity of the UK government. And the foreign minister for the UK at the time, that was Tony Blair's time, was Jack Straw. So the Belhaj ruling, dated the 17th of January 2017, included a reference to the Magna Carta. And the Magna Carta bit that was quoted in the ruling read something to the effect that no person in Britain, that is, should be dispossessed without due remedies. And so let's see what the actual kind of ruling of the Supreme Court read in the Belhaj case. Okay, on paragraph 98, the ruling in the Belhaj case, dated the 17th of January 2017. Paragraph 98, and I shall read the whole paragraph, including the quotation from the Magna Carta. It reads the critical point, in my view, the judge, the Supreme Court judge, whoever was reading this or in whoever's name, is the nature and seriousness of the misconduct alleged. In both cases before the Supreme Court, at however high a level it may have been authorized. Act of state is and remains essentially a domestic law doctrine. And it is English law which sets its limits. English law recognizes the existence of fundamental rights, some long-standing, others more recently developed. Among the most long-standing and fundamental are those represented in Magna Carta, 1225, Article 29, which reads, "No free man shall be taken or imprisoned or dispossessed of his liberties, or be outlawed, or exiled, or in any way destroyed. Nor will we condemn him, nor will we commit him to prison, excepting by the legal judgment of his peers, or by the laws of the land. To none will we sell, to none will we deny, to none will we delay for justice." So that is the bit from the Magna Carta that I have been quoting a lot of the times. And that bit I have quoted and or referred to and mentioned in more than a dozen communications sent to Tower Hamlets Council, to Newham Council, and to others concerned. The essential spirit of that particular quotation is actually, although it is dated 1255, what is it, 1225, it actually is as up to date as the essential framework brought about by the European Convention on Human Rights and the corresponding declarations contained in the founding kind of instruments of the United Nations 75 years ago in 1945. So what these two police women were doing were behaving exactly in contravention of those words in the Magna Carta as quoted by the Supreme Court on the 17th of January 2017. But these police women were behaving in 1993. So whatever the date, it was well after 1225. So they were behaving in breach of English law and fundamental rights. Let me refer to that paragraph again. English law recognizes the existence of fundamental rights, some long-standing, others more recently developed. Among the most long-standing and fundamental are those represented in Magna Carta 1225, Article 29, which reads, And that is where the first kind of line contains this: no free man shall be taken or imprisoned or dispossessed. Now, dispossessed includes the deprivation of the possessions, of course, in addition to other things, the dispossessed of their liberties. Either way, the two Metropolitan Police women were behaving in stark violation of that kind of part of the law, let's say, because the Supreme Court refers to that as part of the fundamental rights recognized by English law. Regardless of whether English law was framed in that context by England itself or by England subscribing to an international declaration upholding the basic fundamental human rights of the person. Now, first of all, I was misled, misinformed, and lied to about an appointment in the court in Shoreditch County Court. And by the time I returned, the two police women were there, and so was Paul Bermin. It was clear from what they did, kept repeatedly issuing threats against me, saying that I was not allowed to go into my flat or my house. That could not have been based on anything I had said to them or I had communicated to them or anybody. This whole scenario, the whole setup, the whole scene was completely confected and created on falsehood. There was no appointment made. There was no time given as to when I should be leaving the property. So they were breaking the Magna Carta in 1993, and it was very much in breach of the European Convention of Human Rights, even if it was done before the UK's own version of the Human Rights Act was enacted a few years after that. And what happened there was one of the things that I had predicted and correctly predicted in 1990, when Bermin and others conspired without my knowledge, behind my back, to have the property vacated in return for Bermin's promise of paying the two lots of gullibles and greedy persons a total of £40,000. Now that was all happening in, 30 years ago. Now if we multiply the kind of normal working hours, so-called, that have been kind of contained in the 30 years. So it would be, let's say, including holiday breaks, it would be like 300 or 250 to 300 working days every year. So if you multiply the number of days by the number of 30, you get a bigger number, and you multiply that by the amount of money that you would have spent paying the lawyer. And if you take the rate charged by David Pennick, who acted for the Manchester City Football Club, then you come to a sum that is in the millions. So the losses, actual losses caused by that attack by the vermin and the police, and allowed by or given go ahead by Henrietta Manners, that attack or those, the series of attacks culminating in that, at that stage, at that date, in that kind of series of behaviors, aggressive and provocative and illegal behavior. So let's see how much it comes to. Okay, so it's 254 working days, let's say. So it's 7,620. So 7,620 days multiplied by 20,000. So it'd be 152 million pounds. If we use the rate charged by David Pennick, then it would be 152 million pounds. So let's say 153 million pounds. Just legal costs. And 152 million pounds or 53 million pounds, even if that sum were available and were paid to the legal kind of representative, so-called, would not guarantee the outcome that would have otherwise been achieved and produced if that eviction had not taken place. Because the eviction interrupted the continuation of the work that had been going on and had been underway to produce benefits, results, and success for hundreds of millions of people. And as the United Nations office in Geneva should have the records of the communications made with them in May 1991 after the flood and storm that hit the southern Bangladesh coast. And the work that was done from New Road, and New Road alone, produced hundreds of millions of pounds worth of actual direct aid to Bangladesh from various sources. So if you multiply by, say, the amount that the UK made available, the John Major made available to Bangladesh in 1991 in May, within days of my appearance at 10 Downing Street with a petition. And that appearance was the top story, the lead story, news story in the BBC's main evening news bulletin. That night it was presented by Clarence Mitchell, if I'm not wrong. Clarence Mitchell, the same person who subsequently became a spokesperson for the Kate and Gary McCann over the murder or disappearance of their daughter, Madeleine McCann, in Portugal. So Clarence Mitchell read the main news item. The main item, the first item was the item featuring me at the door of number 10 Downing Street, handing the demand for help to Bangladesh. That was on the 4th of May, 1991. I had about 3 or 4 people, all of them in the video there. So multiplying that day's work by the 7,600 days or whatever, and using as the kind of unit amount of benefit, using the sum that the UK government gave to Bangladesh government as aid to help the people affected by the floods, it would be billions of pounds. And I'm now including among the beneficiaries that I had targeted, but I was prevented from reaching. Among the beneficiaries, people across Africa, people across Asia, and people across the kind of poorer communities across South America. Now, there is no comparison. There is no comparison, there is no comparable kind of campaign or platform, organization that has been doing anything remotely comparable to what I had been doing. And that work was interrupted by this attack, which was authorized by Henrietta Manners in the Shoreditch County Court, and the others I have mentioned. And this was linked to the Royal London Hospital putting the property on auction and getting it sold. And in previous parts I have said, not today but earlier on other dates, I have said today about the pre-Lilliputian kind of outlook and attitude and mentality, but the pre-Lilliputians had behaved in typically pre-Lilliputian way in the context of all of this, and thus They caused the plot for eviction to go ahead by their stupidity and pre-Lilliputian greed and idiocy. And that pre-Lilliputian, completely pre-Lilliputian inability to appreciate, that is, to recognize the absolute, total, correct words and steps that I had spoken and I had asked them to follow. Now we're talking here now, 30 years later, 30 years since 1990, when the significant kind of delay in Paul Barmin's preliminary action through the Shoreditch County Court was stopped by me. Now, a man who cannot be traced now anymore because he either has died or has kind of abandoned practicing as a solicitor. This man was called John Carr, C-A-R-R. John Carr was based at an address in Charlotte Street, London W1. And it's the same Charlotte Street where Channel 4 had their main office, founding office, on the opposite side of Charlotte Street. So he was on the western side or on the northern side or whatever. He was on that side, and the Charlotte Street, let's say, was on the side nearest to the Tottenham Court Road, because Charlotte Street is kind of parallel to the Tottenham Court Road. And that man, John Carr, said to one of the gullibles, one of the greediest pre-Lilliputian persons, after the court hearing, about my role in the case against Paul Verma. He said to this person that I had stopped Verma getting an order in his favor and against the occupants at New Road. That was in 1990. So if we count from 1990, that day onwards, up to now, today is the 10th of November, it is 30 years, and I was not kind of trading as a licensed law trader. I wasn't doing that then, and I have not been doing at any time. But the difference between trading and not trading, but being activist, campaigning law rights advocate, is most pronounced in all my work. Without appearing in court, most of the times I don't appear in court because there is no need. Because the essential role of courts is to give the stamp, make this kind of official. But if there is no need for a hearing, because the facts are correctly and timely kind of argued and the exposition is made in accordance with the values that are inherent in the legal kind of processes. For example, this 1225 kind of quotation or version of the Magna Carta, quoted by the Supreme Court on the 17th of January 2017 in the case of Belhaj. That is, the case title has the name of Jack Straw, because he was the one who was the foreign secretary, and he colluded with the torture of Belhaj by the Americans. So there were, and there have been, strictly speaking, constitutional law issues all the time. In fact, I have dealt with more constitutional law issues than any other type of legal cases or complexities. And I have found that my citation, clear citation of constitutional principles, is against the various kind of claims and presentations and bundles of arguments by the other side, whatever the other side has been, have been effective, and they have, in effect, stopped the violations of the rights by the other party, rights of the person or persons I had been helping. Now, again, if the rate which David Pennick charged the Manchester City Football Club, if I were to charge at that rate, it would come to, over the years, it would come to billions of pounds. Literally. So that is what I'm meaning when I say that the impact and the consequences of the criminally motivated, racist and stupid and ignorant decision by the Royal London Hospital put the property or properties on auction include this cost and these costs. So what we have discussed so far about 10th of November 1993 have not included what I did about the almost nearly fatal racist attack on Quddus Ali. That attack took place in Commercial Road. And it happened on a Wednesday. So either it was Wednesday the 8th or Wednesday the 7th. Let's check when this was. So it was the second Wednesday of September 1993. that Quddus Ali was attacked and almost killed in the Commercial Road, London E1, not far from the Watney Street Market. And as I have said in a previous kind of piece or pieces, minutes before Quddus and two of his friends walked past me in the Nelson Street, which faces 15 New Road, literally faces 15 New Road. I told them not to go there that way, because my role has been as a teacher, as a guardian, and as a general alerter and warner against bad things happening. And as I said, as I keep saying, every statement I have ever made about events in the future, happening in the future, has come true. And I shall come to what I said about the conspiracy about losing New Road. Now, I told these boys not to go there. I had no evidence that there was anything in specific terms waiting to happen. But my general hunch was that they shouldn't be going that way. And I told them that they would be attacked by racists. I said that. Now, there was nobody else from the whole country who was in contact with those boys at that moment. It was I, not anybody else. And I'll come to explaining why I'm saying it was me and not anybody else. So I was going to meet a man, Bangladeshi man, helping somebody with his housing. I was going to see this man off the Mile End Road, opposite the place called the meeting place, which is called the Lily Center, whatever. And after I spoke to that man for about half an hour or 45 minutes or something like that, and then I walked. That is the Water Lily Center, opposite the Water Lily Center. And I walked on foot from the place along the Whitechapel Road, and I walked past the entrance, main entrance, as it then was. We're talking on the 8th of September, 1993. So that was the Wednesday, second Wednesday of September. So I went into the Princess Alexandra kind of wing that way as a shortcut to New Road. And as I passed the entrance to the Princess Alexandra wing of the Royal London Hospital, I saw some young person that I knew, and the young person knew me. And I asked him, as has been my kind of routine, if I see somebody at a place that is not their home or they should not be there, I ask them what they're doing. And this person, young person, said to me that Quddus Ali was almost killed by racists in the Commercial Road in the previous hour or something. So I said immediately, I said, when I told them that this would happen, I said. And then I went into the kind of entrance in the hospital area, and I saw the people waiting there, 2 or 3 people, whoever. And then eventually I went to a hospital where he was in intensive care, and he was completely kind of bandaged all over the place. You couldn't see his face. And his mother was kind of near him. And his mother was kind of completely, like shell-shocked. And as has been my kind of habit, I took my camera out and I wanted to take a picture of him in that state. And Khoodeelaar's mother said to me that you cannot use it. I said, I won't use it without your knowledge and permission and cooperation, but I must take the picture while he is in this state. This situation will change, so I need to take the picture of now, which is what I did. Now, 27 years later, I haven't used the photograph. And I shall come to discuss that photograph another time in detail, because that will be worth discussing at such length. And the general opinion of the health persons at that time, let's say it was before 10 o'clock in the evening on the day of the 8th of September 1993. The general opinion, which I did not explore too much because of the sensitivity of the matter, was not very positive. And the decision was obviously to leave the kind of recovery chances of the victim with the hospital staff that were kind of hopefully dealing with it. They weren't there physically when I was there, not necessarily all of them, but maybe one there or two. But this is 27 years ago. I don't remember how many people there. I didn't count how many people came in and went out, but it wasn't a crowded place because obviously they won't let anybody in just like that. I was there because I had already been in contact with them before they got attacked, these three boys. But mainly Khoodeelaar was the one who was the most severely beaten up. And I think the other two, again, talking from memory, 27 years later, other two might have abandoned him because of fear for their own lives. And the attackers came from a pub that has since been closed. The pub was on the side street that connects the commercial road with the Watney Street Market and Watney Street itself. So what I did on the night and what I achieved by doing what I did by staying all night, staying up, I shall chronicle and I shall elaborate on and detail in another special kind of edition, but this is just a reference. And I acknowledge the role of Shahabuddin Ahmad Belal. He was a minicab driver at the time. He was working as a minicab driver, and the minicab office was just almost opposite 15 New Road. And the minicab office was in the basement of number 10 New Road, which is the opposite. Now, when I saw him, I was coming back from the London hospital, of course, after seeing Khoodeelaar, and I saw Belal sitting in his car waiting for a customer or whatever, and sitting in the car on the western side, that my side of the road, let's say. And I started talking to Bilal, and I said to him if he had known about what had happened to Quddus Ali. Now, I cannot remember the exact conversation because what he said, whether he knew or not, did not matter, because what he told me about the family, Quddus Ali's family, which I didn't know where they lived or whatever. I only knew Quddus Ali as a group of boys in the area that I would see in the general street. But I didn't know anything about the family. And I never visited any family. In fact, it is my policy not to visit anyone's home. That's the general policy I maintain. And it seemed that Bilal knew the family. However he knew, I didn't know. He knew where they lived and other details. So I went to the family with Bilal, and they gave me several photographs of Quddus Ali for me to give to the media because I wanted to make an issue of it. And I duly gave the picture or pictures, and they used the picture or pictures, the media. Essentially, because of my work overnight to the BBC started reporting this near fatal racist attack starting from the 6 o'clock news bulletin on the BBC Radio 4 and also on television on the 9th of September, which is the Thursday. And once the BBC began reporting, and the later bulletins containing my voice and my image as well, because they came and interviewed me and they started doing that. The first organized response was from the wonkers of the Socialist Wonkers Party. And they are stooges in Tower Hamlets. They mobilized to disrupt this very constitutional law action that I had started. And they wanted to hijack it. And I shall be giving chapter and verse of the Socialist Wonkers hijacking operation and how they messed up the kind of aim of the campaign.